Director of Operations at Murr Ranch Group. Every other week, we discuss the ranch and sporting property market, buying and selling advice, and the latest best stewardship practices, as well as topics currently impacting landowners on this live stream series. If for those of you who are new here, Murr Ranch Group is a full-service ranch real estate brokerage and consulting company focusing on legacy ranches and sporting and conservation properties around the West. Today, we're going to be talking about a specific area of the West that we're experts in. We're going to be talking about the western slope of Colorado. What makes this market different? What should buyers and sellers be looking for if they are interested in purchasing a ranch in this part of the state? We'll find all about it today. And thank you to everyone, again, for submitting questions. We'll try to get to them on this broadcast. Please feel free to ask your questions in the comments during the live stream, and we will try to answer as many as we can. Again, if we don't, we'll reach out to you personally and get those answers to your questions. Helping me out today is our senior broker associate and Western Slope expert, Mike McGarry. Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us today, especially on Avalanche Parade Day. This is a big day for the state across the state. Go Avs. So we appreciate you taking the time. And I guess first, I don't have as much experience on the Western Slope, but what brought you and your family to that part of the state? I guess we'll get started there.
Yeah. Well, we've basically been in Colorado for going on 30 years or so, of which the last 14 years have been spent over here in the Montrose area. Prior to that, we lived on the Front Range on and off and got to experience that until 14 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And what brought you out there?
Well, I had a career change, and I had to be around Denver prior to that for my work for all of those years. And we were just looking, we had a young family at the time, and we're looking for more of an outdoor rural lifestyle. And we've been fortunate enough to have visited probably most, if not all, of the kind of resort areas and throughout the Rocky Mountain West, from Montana down to New Mexico. And I traveled a lot for my work and got to see a lot and experience a lot of those places. And we really just were super attracted to the Western Slope of Colorado because it's a really rare balance of outdoor recreation with good amenities and great weather. I think the great weather part of it is kind of what set it apart for us. We're getting worn down on hard winters, and I grew up feeding cows in central Iowa, and I just was not up for the hard winters anymore. And we're just this section of the Western Slope that we live in, I would consider kind of to be more the western section: Grand Junction, Gunnison, Ridgeway, Telluride, Montrose. There's kind of a little section, kind of a series of valleys right there that a lot of people refer to as kind of the banana belt of Colorado. And that's really what attracted us here. So we've been here 14 years and love it.
I love it. And I know it's gaining more and more popularity. I know a lot of people obviously know what Telluride is. There are a lot of different festivals, those kinds of things. But then I think people that are going to Telluride and things are seeing those other towns. They fly into Montrose. They're seeing how cool of a town that is, Ridgeway. And there are all these little communities kind of along that drive.
Yeah. It's really being discovered, I guess, if you will. Not that it hasn't been discovered in the past, but we're really seeing some growth here. And it's just a rare combination of all of those things that we really haven't found anywhere else.
Yeah. And you've seen a lot. So it's great to know you found your home there. And what's also great is there are a ton of ranches. I know, you look at all these other resort towns and it's kind of a dime a dozen to find really interesting, larger pieces intact. And I feel like the Western Slope still has that.
It does. It still has that underlying ag component. There's a lot of agriculture here. Tourism and agriculture are kind of the center of commerce and revenue generation over here, but just a lot of agriculture in our valley.
Yeah. And speaking of agriculture, I mean, one of the driving forces behind agriculture is water. And I know we've been talking a little bit about the Western Slope, and what makes it so unique and different is the amount of water that exists on that side of the state. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the discrepancy that people might not realize how much water is there versus on the Front Range?
Sure. Yeah. Well, statistically, I guess the western slope of Colorado, which is, the larger portion, the entire western slope. I mean, it starts around Steamboat Springs and goes all the way down to around Pagosa Springs. That entire area is everything on the west side of the Continental Divide. It's roughly about a third of the state in land area, but it's got
Okay.
80% of the water headwaters on this side of the mountains, and we have about 10% of the population here.
That's
So
crazy.
water is really a big issue here, and it drives a lot of agriculture and recreation, both.
Yeah. So for buyers who are looking, who are interested in Western Slope, who, the prices are a little bit different over there, and if they're seeing a property and they see a water component, what should they be looking for when they're considering a ranch out there with water on the property?
Well, I think it goes without saying, more is better, and the more seniority the water has, the better. Those really senior water rights are very desirable and very rare. The people that retain those usually have no desire to get rid of them. If there is a ranch where they're attached, it's a huge bonus. But the really senior water rights are just very hard to come by. I think the most important thing that people looking at ranches should really drill down on, as far as water goes, is the delivery of that water to the ranch.
Mhm.
There's if you look on paper at the water rights summary on a ranch, it can just look fantastic, but sometimes there's issues with actually delivering the water to the ranch itself. And there's ways of finding out how that works and what the history of that is through the state. They keep track of some records there. But I think the ultimate test is you need to go out to the ranch in about August and just
Yeah.
take a look. I mean, it's really sounds pretty simple, but it really is important. There's a lot of places that just have issues with delivery of the water to the ranch, and there are solutions to those things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a deal breaker. The natural NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, they offer some assistance programs for
Okay.
people who put in higher efficiency water delivery systems. And sometimes there's other solutions too. But I think look as part of your diligence process, looking into the delivery of the irrigation water is probably as important as the water rights themselves.
Hmm. And I know you've dealt with tons of transactions that had water involved, and I know recently, maybe in the last 2 years, you had one that had some type of issue with the reservoir, and you were able to figure out what was going on, what was wrong, deliver a solution to your clients, and figure it out. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened there?
Sure. Yeah, it was a classic example of there being about 100-year-old large reservoir on a ranch that had a just fantastic, very senior water rights, very valuable water rights. And the delivery of the water rights themselves was all excellent. But when we started going through the due diligence process, there was a pretty large dam on this reservoir. Like a lot of dams in Colorado, it was what's considered a jurisdictional dam.
Okay.
So the state is in control of making sure that dam is safe. And there are requirements involved when you have a reservoir like that. So one of those requirements is it has to be years. And sometimes these reservoirs can require some maintenance. And so we were representing a buyer, and they were a little bit hesitant about the dam because it was so old. And these
Right.
dams can function for a long, long time. So they were getting cold feet about it for a while, and we ended up the solution ended up being we had an engineer come out, inspect the dam, and prove up that everything was solid on it. And then kind of the icing on the cake for, some certainty for this buyer was we asked the state of Colorado to actually come out there and conduct their 6-year inspection a year early during the diligence period. And it was great. They signed it off for another 6 years, and everybody was happy. And so it just provided some assurance that they weren't going to be dealing with a huge expense right out of the chute, buying their new ranch. So it was really great. It seems like there are always solutions, but sometimes you have to get really creative to try and get to those.
And how did you realize that that was a problem? Who found kind of the issue? Was it the buyer when they were under due diligence, or?
Yeah, we actually made a visit out to the ranch, and they started digging into, well, how old is this reservoir? How old is this outlet structure on this reservoir, and how old are these water rights? And the answer to all those
pretty
questions
old.
was, yeah, it's pretty darn old was the answer to almost everything. And so they were just a little bit, concerned about it. But I mean, if these things are engineered correctly, they can last for a long, long, long time. But maintenance on these reservoirs is important to keep up with, and it also can really catch some people off guard. For example, a lot of the irrigation water is delivered from reservoirs up on the Grand Mesa in the North Fork Valley over here, which is kind of around Delta, Paonia, Crawford, Hotchkiss area. And when people buy those ranches over there, they have to understand that if their water is stored in a reservoir, they probably have some financial responsibility to maintain that reservoir. And you want to really understand what your obligations are before you buy a ranch. There have been some people by some pretty high expenses, and if it's controlled by a jurisdictional dam, the state can actually shut your reservoir off where you cannot no longer deliver any water to your ranch. So in fact, it's been a problem enough for enough people that there are actually grants available for people who can't afford to fix their reservoirs to assist them so that they're just not without water. And if some of these reservoirs are shared, so if you're sharing that reservoir, the maintenance of that reservoir with your neighbors, and your neighbors are not all able to afford to make those repairs in a timely fashion, then you can end up having some problems. So those are all things to really dig into in the diligence process.
And the state kind of helps with some of that if need be.
They can, yeah. There are some programs out there to help people because there's some pretty major repairs in some cases.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of other projects too, I know, especially on the Western Slope, like the Gunnison Tunnel project through Montrose and Delta. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Something that, people should be aware of when they're looking out west.
Yeah, that's a favorite thing of mine. I mean, it's an amazing project. It was done 120 years ago. Basically, the Bureau of Reclamation partnered with a private water association over here in Montrose, in the early 1900s, and they created probably one of the most incredible water delivery systems ever made. They own a water right that's one of the largest and most senior water rights in the state of Colorado that originates up kind of north and east of Gunnison in the high country up there. It comes down and it goes into Blue Mesa Reservoir, and then it spills out into the Gunnison River, and they tunneled 6 miles across over to the Uncompahgre River, and they deliver water into the Uncompahgre River that's taken out and delivers water to about 83,000 acres around Montrose and Delta here throughout. Like it has like 600 miles of canals and so forth involved. Wow. There's nothing mechanical. It all runs on like 1/4 of degree of slope, and it's just one of the most incredible engineering feats ever made. I mean, it's
it was amazing. Done 120 years ago.
Yeah.
Still, that's amazing. Yeah. And is that kind of, just for my, a question that I have about something like that, are you a part of like a shared ditch when it comes to something like that? Is like that a shared responsibility as well, kind of like the reservoirs you were talking about?
Yeah, A little bit. It's more simple. The water company is obligated to deliver the water to you. So all of those canals and all of that delivery to your property is their responsibility, which is great.
Okay.
The water, so all you're responsible for is where the water company delivers it through your head gate. That delivery system onto your ranch from that head gate on is your responsibility. But they maintain the entire system, and it's still, there are some things to consider, because when they deliver to your property, they may not just be delivering it to your property, but other people's as well throughout a common ditch. So if you're in a water sharing situation of any kind, whether it be a reservoir or a ditch or a canal, you just want to really try and understand that delivery and how it is to work with your neighbors, and if everybody's playing fair and what the rules are. And you can avoid yourself, some trouble by doing a little homework before you buy the ranch.
Yeah, but sometimes it's why, we have people like you to walk people through that, because some
Yeah.
of it might be a little intimidating. But beyond the water, I know we look at all of the market trends in different counties around the state, around the West, and the market on the Western Slope has just been crazy the past couple of years. I know it's been crazy everywhere, but I think we've just seen an uptick. What are we seeing from buyers? What have we been seeing from that side of the transaction in the past couple of years?
Well, over the past couple of years, there's been just incredible level of activity. It's been an incredibly robust market, short supply of great properties, and a lot of the buyers have found themselves in competitive situations. And there have been ranches that have, been selling for full price, and some over a little bit, over above asking price. We're starting to see a little bit less of that right now. I think that, I think we're seeing a little bit of a reduction in the number of inquiries that we're getting just recently in the past couple of weeks. And I think people are kind of starting to take their time a little bit more.
Yeah, I would agree.
When things were really booming, we actually saw some people some of the buyers were actually getting a little bit discouraged with what was out there. They had already vetted all the ranches that were out there available, couldn't find anything that would work. And so they were actually starting to look at making some off-market transactions, or approaching, people that had properties that weren't really listed. We saw a little bit of that. But I think it's, people are they're still pursuing land as an asset class. It's always done well in uncertain times, and not to say that we're in uncertain times, but there is a little uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility in the equity markets right now.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's still a very active market for buyers. There are just some people that are kind of not completely putting the brakes on, but maybe taking their time, maybe revisiting some properties that they may have looked at a year ago that are still available, with the expectation that maybe they could make that work. And maybe the seller may have a little bit more right now, seeing a little bit of that.
Well, it seems like on the buyer side, at least, when it's a little less competition, it becomes a bit slower. The process becomes a little bit more enjoyable, because, this is a big purchase for a lot of people. They're travel. A lot of times they'd have to travel to the property. It's already kind of this hard decision. So when they can take their time and really get to understand the market and work with brokers like you who understand the area really well, this is a really good time, I think, for buyers to really figure out what they want and what's important to them, instead of, just deciding what fits because it's available. So I think this is a good time for people to really get to know the market and get to know different areas that they love, like the Western Slope.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I think that's kind of, we're headed into that. But on the seller side, I mean, even recently, some of the deals you've worked on, we've seen either above asking price still. I know people keep talking about the market is slowing. It's not going to be as crazy the last couple of years, but recently we've even had some huge sales in that area. So on the seller side, kind of what are you seeing right now?
We're seeing a combination of things. One thing that's a little bit unusual is that we've had some people that have been talking about selling that are not right now because they are unable to find a replacement property to defer their taxes into. So we've
Yeah,
had
I mean,
yeah, we've had some people that have been talking about it, kind of waiting throughout this, last couple of good years to really find something that they could move into,
mhm,
and they haven't been able to find anything. And so they're kind of, they really want to hold their land as an asset. So they don't want to, diversify it into another asset class, but they just can't find anything really to buy,
mhm,
and to roll, so if they sold their place to roll into. So that's one thing. We're not able to find replacement properties for them. But the market is still, I think pretty robust. If a great property comes on the market, there's interest. Supply is still short. There are plenty of buyers out there. I just think that it's maybe not as competitive of an environment as it was over the past
mhm.
couple of years.
And I know a lot of people too, because we have a couple clients that are even, they consider themselves off market, or they don't want to necessarily put their names out there right away. So, that's where brokerage comes super in handy. When you have this knowledge, what's out there, even if it's not for the replacement property, at least. So if they want to find something, that's kind of where we can help. So those listings can come up, those 1031s still can happen, and
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
support them in that. But
Yeah, exactly. We do have some people that have kind of mentioned that they would sell their ranch for whatever reason. Maybe it's a privacy or family dynamic of some kind. They have chosen to just kind of keep it quiet. We
mhm.
do know a lot of those. We know of several of those opportunities right now, but we're starting to maybe see a little bit of that, where people, and even people that were not successful at selling their ranches in the last couple of years, some of them are asking to kind of just keep it in mind and kind of have a quiet listing, if you will.
Mhm. Yep. So if your buyer's out there and you're not seeing what you want, there is a high chance we know that something like that exists out there. But yeah, I would agree across the board. That's kind of, it's slowing down a bit, but there's still a lot out there.
Yeah,
And I guess, looking not just currently and in the past couple of years, but looking at the future, especially in your area. I know we've seen an influx in population, an influx in different kinds of tourism in your area. But what do you kind of foresee for people who are even thinking of resale in the future, in that area?
yeah. This area has always been a very desirable area, and I personally don't see that changing. In fact, I see probably more people moving here now with the onset of Starlink and
Yeah.
fiber high-speed connections has really changed some of these valleys out here, where people are able to work remotely and enjoy the outdoor lifestyle and not have to live in a city to work. I think that's really starting to. It's going to drive population and demand for good properties. This area, if an A property in an A location comes to the market, um, that happens very rarely, especially with the larger ranches down, closer to Ridgeway and Telluride. Those properties just do not come on the market. They're held in very strong hands,
Oh yeah.
and they just, if one makes itself available, people will jump on that, regardless of usually of what the market conditions are. It's just those are rare opportunities, and I think that they'll probably continue. We do have a lot of farmland here, and I think farmland is pretty predictable. It usually fluctuates in value within a fairly narrow range based upon commodity prices, and I think that will always continue to be the case. I do start to see a lot of ranchers around here that are really getting creative and starting to think outside the box on specialty crops agritourism, more sustainable
Cool.
farming methods. They're having people that are paying to come out and work on their ranches and experience that lifestyle, for a week or two at a time, and it creates revenue.
I
And
would love to do
yeah,
that.
it's really an interesting situation and opportunity. And I think that people are going to be doing more of that, and we'll see
Mhm.
more of that, which is in turn just going to continue to keep the area healthy. It's a fantastic area, fantastic lifestyle, incredible air service now that we have in this area between Grand Junction and Montrose. I mean, we've got nonstop flights to several cities. Some of it's seasonal, but people can get here easily, have a great level of amenities and things to do, and just enjoy it. I mean, it's just a fun place. We love it.
Well, I love when we were talking before this, how I asked about your 4th of July plans, and you barely have to drive far to get to Ouray to see the fireworks you were saying. I mean, it's just a different type of thing up there instead of having to deal with I-70 all the time to get where you
Yeah,
need to go, like I'm gonna have to do tomorrow.
yeah,
You're up there. I mean,
yeah,
and flying from Denver up there takes less than an hour, and
yeah.
it's just a really neat pocket that you found yourselves in. And I feel like you guys did it at the right time too.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Things are pretty close together here. I mean, you could have a day of world-class skiing and go have a wonderful dinner and soak in the hot springs, and drive home, in one day. It's awesome.
I love that. And you were talking a little bit about the ag side. Um, what kind of, I know Paonia is big up there for crops. I know Palisade, if people aren't aware already, it's a great place for wineries and that kind of thing. What type of crops are kind of what's it known for on the Western Slope? I feel like you guys are responsible for a lot of ag
Yeah,
that people are unaware of.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of cattle producers here, of course.
Mhm.
Which drives the ranch market. We have a lot of one of the advantages we have here for cattle producers is we have a lot of crop ground at lower elevations here in the valleys that's available for grazing and calving in the spring, where people that are on the real high elevation ranches have to sometimes go a long ways to find that. We have it all kind of all in one area here. As far as crops go, we had a big run with the industrial hemp over the past. It started about 3 or 4 years ago and ended, in the last year or two. Was not a real success story. So we're still kind of coming out of that. But have always innovated here in agriculture. They get in. We have, a fair amount of corn and beans and a lot of hay production here. But you were talking about the North Fork Valley, Paonia, Cedar Edge, Palisade, where they have the wineries and the fruit orchards. We have all these microclimates that you can have different species of grapes and different species of fruits. They're just
Mhm.
they've been doing it long enough over here where they kind of know what works. And so you can have a winery and raise grapes, or you can raise hay and corn if you want to be a farmer, or you can get into specialty crops like we're doing a lot of barley this last year.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
there are a lot of hop producers here now too. And some of the Colorado breweries, they basically told these guys that they will source as much Colorado grown hops as they can provide. And we're starting to see more and more of that. As long and along with kind of some more sustainable farming methods being employed right now. So it's really exciting to see. There's just a lot of diversity in the agriculture here, and I think that'll continue.
Yeah, that pocket. I mean, Ken has always dreamed of living in Paonia one day and
Yeah,
raising chickens and doing the whole thing. But it really is a very unique place. And I'm just so happy that we have someone like you out there to really help service people who are interested in the area, because I think it's just going to get crazier and crazier as time goes on. And I think you're a lucky guy to be living in such a beautiful place.
yeah, we sure are. We're grateful for it.
Awesome. Well, if you didn't, we didn't get any questions during this. But Mike has been working on a market update for the Western Slope. Thank you so much for doing that, which will be coming out in the coming weeks. So be sure to check that out if anyone has further questions about the Western Slope. If you're interested in properties out there and want to talk to Mike, please feel free to reach out to him at mike@merranchgroup.com or reach out to the office. But Mike, I just wanted again to thank you for taking the time today to share your expertise with us. And I hope you guys have the best 4th of July up in Ouray with your family. Sounds like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. See you, Mike. And for everyone else out there, if you want to learn more about the Western Slope or any other region in the Rocky Mountains, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter on our website at www.merranchgroup.com or give us a call at 303-623-4545. Thanks. Go Avs.